Hi guys, I'm going to try to make this short. Back in the beginning, when God created everything, when He brought all that there is out of nothing, He created by bringing in structure and order. He is not a God of chaos. He's a God of structure and order, and we find that throughout the scriptures. So one of the things that we notice is as He created nature and set it in its course, He created man and said to man, "Take care of what I've made. I'm leaving it in your possession. And so you take care of it. This is your job. And things will be good because everything is good." So things happened. Things didn't stay so good. And we have not yet lost our obligation to be good stewards of what Hashem has put into our hands. Some of us only have little container pots in a little apartment in a big city. Some of us have huge ranches that cover a whole massive, mind-boggling numbers of hectares or acres. Most of us, though, are somewhere in the middle. And we have a small piece of ground somewhere that we call our own. We have some pets, we may have some animals, we may have a garden. It's our obligation as people who live to honor the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to implement the wisdom that we find in the Torah as we do our work. Now, what's interesting to me is as I live where I live and I do what I do, I tend to rub shoulders pretty often with a very secular crowd, a very secular crowd. Let's just leave it at that. They're very different than me. And oftentimes they're very surprised to find out that the reason we do many of the things that we do is because we feel it honors God and we feel that it is an instruction in our holy books to care for our animals, to steward our environment toward restoration, not towards destruction, to be conservative, to conserve our things and not just overuse all that is available, to begin to learn and implement a lot of these fantastic traditions of ancient peoples. Because if you think about it, since creation, however long ago that was a long time ago, there have been many, many generations, there are things that our people learned that kept us alive, kept us healthy. It made us develop into beautiful people. And I'm not just talking spiritual traits. I'm talking our faces were not malformed. We were attractive people. We continue to be. But as we've changed the way we do things, we're finding that, our skeletal structure is changing. Now all of a sudden people need braces and glasses and things are different than the way it was with our ancient ancestors. And we're beginning to learn that a lot of our ancient traditions were really, really good for us. There was a lot of wisdom there. So as we're learning the wisdom that we find in our holy books, and we're learning the wisdom of our ancestors, and we're working to implement these things, we find ourselves as a family rubbing shoulders primarily with a secular crowd, not with a religious crowd. And sometimes we find ourselves being misunderstood by a religious crowd, and that's unfortunate. So I wanted to remind our friends, both the secular and the religious, that our injunction to care for the earth comes from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It comes from the creator of the universe who said, "I made this holy thing and I'm going to leave it with you to take care of, and I'll help you. I'll walk alongside you, but you've got to do the work. You've got to tend, you've got to guard, you've got to preserve, you've got to protect. You have to do the work that will benefit both you and the soil, the land, the animals, however it works. And in doing so, it shows your character. It shows who you are. It shows who you serve. Somehow the religious group has seemed to have lost the bulk of this message. And I think a lot of that comes from our shift in our cultures away from an agrarian society. And maybe even before that, we had lost a lot of that focus. I don't know. But it's time to bring it back. It's time that more of our religious friends find themselves shopping primarily, when they can, at farmers markets, buying from their neighbors, meeting their farmers, learning how their meat and their produce is grown, learning how the food producers are benefiting and restoring the land that they are stewards of, and encouraging them and supporting their venture financially by becoming a buyer. It's time that we, as a religious people, begin to appreciate those who are stewarding the environment in a positive way. Everybody wants to do good. Nobody wants to do bad. Nobody wants to be destructive. And our science is always changing. Science is never settled on anything. It's always changing. We're always learning. We're always growing. So as science reveals that certain things may have unintended consequences, then we have to go back and do some repair work. So this is where Tikkun and our Tikkun Homestead comes from. We're working on repairing, on healing, on fixing both our land, because we are stewards of a small farm, a small family farm that's been in my family for, well, now 3 generations. We are stewards of our faith by the way we wear our faith, the way we walk. Everybody notices. They may not talk to you about it. They may not talk to me about it, but everybody notices. We need to be good stewards of all that we have. That includes our sheep, our goats, our cows, our chickens, our dog, our cat, our garden, everything. The worms, the microbiology that lives in our soil, the wildlife that spends its time on our property, the fish in the pond, everything. We need to have in mind that in the beginning, when God created the earth and saw everything and called it good, and the Garden of Eden, where everything was paradise, part of our task is not to recreate it on our own, but to work towards that. Because when Moshiach comes, when the new world begins, it's not going to suddenly just happen like someone flipped a switch and all of a sudden our destroyed and dead environments will revive and come to life. We have to do that work. So let's get started. Let's get started as a religious people in the restoration, in the healing, in the fixing of things that we have done as a people in the past and have left unintended consequences. And let's just work on fixing it. Let's work on fixing our faith. Let's work on fixing our relationships. Let's work on fixing all the things that are within our power to attempt to make right. So, Tikkun Homestead, that is what we decided to call our little small farm, because restoration, repair, healing is important to us as religious people, whether we're speaking of faith and religion, whether we're speaking of ecology, whether we're speaking of traditions and health. It seems to be the permeating theme throughout almost everything that we do. So, I want to encourage you today, take note of where your local farmers markets are. Learn who your local farmers are. Find out who is raising your food in a way that honors God, whether or not they may recognize that. Don't be afraid to attend some of these events where you can learn things, even though you're going to rub shoulders with people who are very different than you. It's a sad thing that the people of God are not the primary champions of the restoration of the world. So let's change that. Let's fix that. Let's heal the way that worldview is and make it better.